You've been lied to about intelligence your entire life. Not deliberately, perhaps. But the lie persists anyway, embedded so deeply into the social fabric that questioning it feels almost dangerous. Here it is. Society claims to admire intelligent people. We build statues for them. We name schools after them. We tell children to study hard so they can become like them. But watch what actually happens when someone genuinely intelligent walks into a room. Something shifts. A tension you can't quite name. People smile, but their shoulders tighten. They laugh at the intelligent person's jokes a half-second too late. They nod along to words they don't fully understand, already planning their exit. And later in private, the whispers begin. He thinks he's better than everyone. She makes everything so complicated. Why can't he just be normal? Strange, isn't it? The very quality we claim to celebrate becomes in practice something we instinctively resist. You might think this is jealousy. That would be the comfortable explanation. But sit with it longer. Jealousy implies desire, wanting what someone else has. What happens around genuinely intelligent people feels different. It's not desire, it's threat, something deeper, something almost primal. Richard Feynman noticed this. The Nobel Prize-winning physicist spent decades navigating a world that simultaneously worshipped and resented his mind. He once described a peculiar phenomenon. Whenever he explained something clearly, people initially seemed grateful. But if he kept explaining, if he made things too clear, too logical, too undeniable, the gratitude curdled into something else. Discomfort, sometimes hostility. Why would clarity provoke hostility? Think about it. When you understand something, truly understand it, you lose the ability to hide behind it. Confusion provides shelter. I don't get it is a valid excuse. It's too complicated absolves responsibility. But once someone makes an idea crystal clear to you, that shelter vanishes. You can no longer claim ignorance. You must now respond, think, decide, act. The intelligence that illuminated the path also eliminated your escape routes. Feynman understood that intelligence doesn't just reveal truths about the external world, it reveals truths about people, about their hidden assumptions, their comfortable contradictions, the beliefs they hold, not because they've examined them, but because examining them would be too costly. Picture yourself in a meeting. Everyone agrees on a plan. It feels good. Consensus, harmony, forward motion. Then one person raises a hand and asks a question. A simple question, really. But the question exposes a flaw no one wanted to see. Suddenly, the plan doesn't look so solid. The harmony fractures. And who gets blamed? Not the flaw. The person who pointed at it. This is where the fear begins. Not fear of intelligence itself, but fear of what intelligence does. It disrupts. It destabilizes. It forces confrontation with realities that social groups have tacitly agreed to ignore. You think you want the truth. Everyone says they want the truth. But truth is expensive. It demands change. It invalidates investments. Years spent believing something. Identities built around assumptions. Relationships structured on shared fictions. Intelligence, wielded honestly, threatens all of it. And so, a quiet contract emerges in most social spaces. Be smart enough to contribute, but not so smart that you expose contradictions. Solve problems, but don't reveal that the problems exist because of decisions made by people in power. Excel, but never in ways that make others feel they've been standing still. Feynman broke that contract constantly. He couldn't help it. And what fascinated him wasn't the brilliance itself. It was watching how people reacted to it. There's something Feynman discovered that cuts even deeper than social discomfort. And you're probably not going to like it. Intelligent people don't just threaten individual egos. They threaten entire systems of meaning. The structures that hold societies together, hierarchies, traditions, unquestioned authorities, all depend on a certain amount of collective blindness. Not stupidity exactly, something more subtle, a willingness to not look too closely. Consider religion for a moment, not to attack it, but to understand something. For centuries, religious institutions held enormous power. That power rested partially on mystery, on the idea that certain truths were beyond human comprehension, accessible only through faith and authorized interpreters. Then along came people who asked uncomfortable questions. Galileo pointing his telescope at Jupiter's moons. Darwin tracing the shapes of finch beaks. Each question didn't just challenge a specific belief. It challenged the entire premise that some questions shouldn't be asked. The church didn't burn heretics because it hated knowledge. It burned them because knowledge, unconstrained, dissolves the foundations of authority. Now translate this to your workplace, your family, your friend group. Every social structure has its unspoken rules, its protected beliefs, its questions that aren't supposed to be asked out loud. Who really makes the decisions? Why does this person have power? Is this tradition actually useful or just familiar? The intelligent person sees these questions, can't unsee them. And their mere presence, before they've even opened their mouth, reminds everyone that the questions exist. Feynman experienced this during the investigation of the Challenger disaster. NASA had built an extraordinary institution. Brilliant engineers, historic achievements, national pride. But something had gone wrong. The space shuttle had exploded. 7 people had died. And when Feynman started asking questions, he found something disturbing. The organization had developed an immunity to bad news. Engineers knew the O-rings were dangerous. They'd written memos, raised concerns. But the concerns had been filtered, softened, reinterpreted as they traveled up the hierarchy. By the time information reached the decision makers, it had been transformed. Danger became acceptable risk. Warning became noted concern. The system had learned to protect itself from its own knowledge. When Feynman demonstrated the O-ring failure on live television, dunking rubber in ice water, showing how it lost flexibility, he wasn't just revealing a technical flaw. He was exposing an organizational pathology. And the reaction was telling. Some people thanked him. Others were furious. How dare he embarrass the institution? Didn't he understand how things worked? Didn't he respect the process? He understood perfectly. That was the problem. Here's what you need to grasp. Institutions don't fear intelligence because they're evil. They fear it because they're fragile. Every organization, every society, every relationship is held together by agreements, most of them unspoken. We agree to not notice certain things. We agree to not say certain truths. We agree to maintain certain fictions because maintaining them is easier than confronting what lies beneath. Intelligence threatens the agreements. And it's not that intelligent people want to destroy things. Most don't. Feynman loved playfulness, jokes, bongo drums, strip clubs, picking locks for fun. He wasn't a grim revolutionary, but his mind couldn't stop working, couldn't stop seeing patterns, couldn't stop noticing when the pattern didn't match the explanation. You felt this yourself, probably. A moment when you saw something clearly, a flaw in an argument, a contradiction in someone's behavior, a gap between what was said and what was meant. And you had to make a choice, speak and risk the consequences, or stay silent and feel something inside you contract. That choice is the tax intelligent people pay for seeing clearly. And the more intelligent you are, the more often the bill comes due. But here's where it gets stranger still. The fear doesn't just come from outside. Intelligent people often fear themselves. Sounds paradoxical, doesn't it? You'd think that someone gifted with a powerful mind would feel confident, secure, perhaps even superior. But spend time with genuinely intelligent people, not the arrogant ones performing intelligence, but the real ones, and you'll notice something unexpected. a hesitation, a loneliness they rarely name, sometimes a quiet terror. Feynman confessed this in ways most people missed. He talked about lying awake at night, his mind refusing to stop, following threads of thought into territory that felt dangerous. Not dangerous like physical harm, dangerous like losing your footing on reality itself. When you can think past the edges of what most people consider, where do you stop? Who tells you when you've gone too far? The mind that questions everything eventually turns the questioning inward, and there it finds no solid ground. You think doubt is uncomfortable. Try certainty's opposite, the realization that nothing you believe is truly stable, that every foundation rests on another foundation, which rests on assumptions, which rest on conventions, which rest on nothing but collective agreement to stop digging. Most people never dig that deep. They hit a layer of bedrock, God, science, tradition, common sense, and stop. The bedrock feels solid. They build their lives on it. But the intelligent mind keeps a pickaxe handy, can't help swinging it occasionally. And sometimes the bedrock cracks. This is why intelligent people often seem strange, even to themselves. They've seen behind curtains that others don't know exist. They carry knowledge that can't be shared, not because it's secret, but because the sharing would require first explaining that there's something to share. And that explanation would require explaining why most people don't see it. And that explanation would sound arrogant. So they stay quiet, smile at conversations about topics they've thought through 1,000 times, nod along to conclusions they've already examined and found wanting. The loneliness isn't social, it's epistemic, a loneliness of perception. Feynman developed coping mechanisms. He played constantly. Bongo drums, safe-cracking, drawing, flirting, teaching with theatrical enthusiasm. The play wasn't distraction. It was survival. A way to stay tethered to the human world while his mind wandered territories that most humans never visit. He understood intuitively that intelligence without play becomes monstrous. The mind that only analyzes, only questions, only deconstructs, eventually hollows itself out. But society doesn't see the play as necessary. It sees it as frivolous. Why is the genius wasting time on games? Because the games are what keep the genius from disappearing into abstraction, from becoming the kind of cold, disconnected intellect that horror movies are made of. And here's the cruel irony. Society fears intelligent people, partly because it imagines them as exactly that: cold, disconnected, inhuman. The stereotype of the evil genius, the mad scientist, the calculating manipulator. But the reality is usually the opposite. Most genuinely intelligent people feel too much, not too little. They see suffering more clearly. They understand consequences more deeply. They can't unsee the connections between actions and outcomes that others comfortably ignore. The coldness you sometimes perceive isn't absence of feeling. It's exhaustion, the fatigue of caring about things that others dismiss, the weariness of explaining again and again why something matters, only to watch eyes glaze over. So the intelligent person retreats, not from cruelty, but from self-protection. They learn which parts of themselves are acceptable to show and which must be hidden. They develop a public self that fits, that doesn't frighten, that laughs at the right moments and asks questions only within acceptable bounds. And inside, something dims. This is what society does to its most capable minds, not through malice, through fear, disguised as normalcy. But here's what Feynman figured out. A truth that changes everything if you truly hear it. The fear isn't about intelligence at all. Let that land for a moment. Everything you've considered so far, the social tension, the institutional resistance, the inner loneliness, none of it is actually about cognitive capacity. Not really. Intelligence is just the surface, the trigger. What people truly fear lies beneath, and Feynman spent his entire life circling around it without ever quite naming it directly. What terrifies society about intelligent people is that they serve as living proof of a possibility most people have abandoned. The possibility of seeing clearly, of thinking independently, of questioning inherited beliefs and arriving at conclusions through genuine examination rather than social conformity. Every intelligent person, simply by existing, reminds everyone else that this path exists, that it's available, that the comfortable fog of unexamined assumptions is a choice, not an inevitability. And that reminder is unbearable. Because if thinking clearly is possible, if questioning is an option, then not thinking clearly becomes a decision. Suddenly, you're not a passive recipient of cultural programming. You're an active participant in your own blindness. The intelligent person doesn't have to say a word. Their presence alone makes the accusation. This is why Feynman's most famous quality wasn't his brilliance. It was his insistence that brilliance isn't special. He repeated it constantly, in lectures, in books, in interviews. I'm not smarter than other people. I just stay with problems longer. There's no miracle, people. You can understand anything if you're willing to do the work. Most listeners heard humility, false modesty maybe, but Feynman meant something far more radical. He was saying, the thing you think separates us doesn't exist. The barrier you've constructed between yourself and understanding is imaginary. You could see what I see, you're choosing not to. That's the uncomfortable truth. Not that intelligent people are different, but that the difference is smaller than we pretend. We've built an entire mythology around genius precisely to avoid this conclusion. We call them gifted, as if intelligence arrived from outside, distributed unfairly by cosmic lottery. We make them special, other, not like us, because if they're fundamentally different, we're excused. We couldn't think like that even if we tried. But you could. Not perfectly, not in every domain, but far more than you allow yourself to believe. The fear of intelligent people is, at its core, a fear of your own unused potential, a fear of what you might discover if you actually looked, what beliefs might crumble, what comfortable arrangements might become untenable, what responsibilities you might suddenly bear. Society doesn't fear intelligence. Society fears the obligation that comes with it. Feynman lived that obligation joyfully, but it cost him. The loneliness was real. The friction was constant. He watched colleagues retreat into safe specializations while he kept wandering across boundaries, asking childlike questions that made experts uncomfortable. He could have played the game, collected honors, nodded along at conferences. Instead, he dunked O-rings in ice water on national television and embarrassed an entire institution because 7 people had died and no one else was willing to say why. That's what intelligence actually is. Not processing speed, not memory capacity, willingness. The willingness to see what's there, even when seeing costs you. Look around your life. Notice what you've agreed not to notice. Feel the shape of questions you've learned not to ask. That's where your intelligence is waiting. Not absent, just dormant. Kept asleep by the same fear you now recognize. Feynman's real legacy wasn't physics. It was permission. Permission to be curious without apology, to see clearly without shame, to think for yourself, even when it scares everyone, including you. The question isn't whether you're intelligent enough. It's whether you're willing to pay the price of using what you already have.